I'm Mark Evans. In my latest book, Mark My Words, I invite you to join me on a journey that visits our past, present, and even our future. The book's subtitle is How to Discover the Joy of Music, the Delight of Language, and the Pride of Achievement in the Age of Trash Talk and MTV. If I ask you to take time out of your busy life to read my book, I think I owe it to you to explain why. Many would recognize that our society is in crisis, offering a multiplicity of diagnoses as the cause. Taxes are too high. They are. Government is too big, intruding its bureaucratic nose into even the most private activities. It is. Politicians disappoint and deceive. They do. Financial markets go up and down. They will. Dictators and fanatics represent a serious threat to peace and prosperity. Is there any doubt? And children drive their parents to distraction. It was ever thus. Therefore, the natural tendency is to think that most problems facing us are political or economic in origin and political or economic in solution. Culture in general, and the arts in particular, are often regarded as the icing on the cake, the cherry on the sundae. In effect, cultural questions are regarded as decorative and ephemeral. We often fail to recognize that many of our most serious problems are actually cultural in origin, and therefore cultural in solution. Today we live in what I call a celebrity culture. The media, with a few exceptions, focus far too much attention on people of little achievement, who are famous for, well, just being famous. We all know the names of these celebrities, and we're familiar with every detail of their lives. But we often don't recognize the names of true heroes, like winners of the Congressional Medal of Honor, or our finest composers, writers, and artists. How did this happen? In Mark My Words, I begin by asking some questions. For instance, what has happened to our language? A modern-day Shakespeare would probably have the gloomy Danish Prince Hamlet asking, to be or not to be? You know, like, that is a question. Does good grammar matter? Now, when I ask this question, there are always a few English teachers nodding their heads in agreement, but there are reasons why language matters. We're faced with a growing bureaucracy, filled with bureaucrats who followed what the brilliant satirist and writer, my friend Dr. James Boren, called the bureaucrat's credo. When in charge, ponder. When in trouble, delegate. When in doubt, mumble. When they're not mumbling, they're often imposing on us absurd rules of political correctness, like the government agency in Britain that objected to an employer's advertising for reliable employees. After all, unreliable people might be offended. As for the entertainment industry, we're constantly subjected to a stream of X-rated language in the movies, in song lyrics, and in the distinctly unfunny rants of comedians who are really just vulgarians in search of a vocabulary. There are other important questions to ask. Whatever happened to music? Classical music has lost much of its audience, especially among the young. If we look back, we find that many modern composers of concert music have abandoned their audience to pursue academic theories or to seek shock value for its own sake. One famous modern composer composed a piece for the piano, in which the pianist sits silently at the piano and doesn't play a note. Another modern composer actually burned a violin on stage as part of a performance. As for pop music, we've witnessed a revolution fed and led by slick promoters, marketing singers who can't sing, and bands who couldn't perform if someone unplugged their amplifiers. Similarly, what has happened to art? There are fine painters and sculptors today, but too often they're ignored in deference to those who have mastered the art of self-promotion. Like a famous artist whose works sell for millions and whose masterpiece consists of a shark pickled in formaldehyde. And then there are paintings that dazzle the critics and the intelligentsia until they found out that the master artist was actually a chimpanzee. And whatever happened to books? Too many students today graduate with poor reading skills, often because they haven't been taught to read as children, only to guess, all the while with their teacher's approval. And then their libraries busily taking classics off their shelves instead of putting them on. Finally, there's our vanishing history. When the National Endowment for Humanities conducted a survey of college students, around 1 in 4 couldn't tell the difference between the words of Karl Marx and those found in the U.S. Constitution. More than 40% couldn't correctly indicate when the Civil War had occurred. And in a recent survey by Newsweek, 29% couldn't name the vice president, and 73% had no idea why we fought the Cold War. What about our colleges, you ask? Well, more than half don't require American history for students to graduate. But many offer courses in rock music. And one of my favorites, the sociology of sociability. That's a course analyzing the impact of parties. Presumably, there are students willing to have the parties and make the sacrifice in order to do the necessary research. And there was even a college course analyzing the television program Baywatch. We know there's a problem. What can we do about it? Well, fortunately, a lot. Remember, my book's subtitle is How to Discover the Joy of Music, the Delight of Language, and the Pride of Achievement in the Age of Trash Talk and MTV. And there are many things we can do together to revitalize our culture. Because I believe that we should light candles rather than curse the darkness, I've started a nonprofit organization called Cultural Conservation. Best of all, each of us, in his or her own way, can become a cultural conservationist. While there are some things that require all of us to work together, there are many things you can do individually to conserve our culture and brighten your own life in the process. One of the most important examples of cultural conservation can be found in the work of people who start things on their own, things started by just one person. I tell the stories of some in my book. A Chicago school teacher who responded to poor schools by starting one of her own in her house. Today, it's a famous inner-city academy with graduates going on to prestigious universities. Or consider the most popular jazz festivals in the country, started by jazz fans with an idea and enthusiasm. Then there's the violinist who single-handedly prevented America's most famous concert hall from being demolished. You don't have to be rich, famous, or powerful to make a difference, especially in the lives of your children or grandchildren. You can make a very important difference in your own life through self-education. In today's digital age, I can show you many worlds to explore without ever walking out your front door. For me, the most exciting part of my book tells you how to develop a personal plan of action. Now, no one will conserve our culture for us. We have to do it ourselves. And I won't promise that it will be easy. We don't want to be wildly optimistic or foolishly pessimistic. We can be what my mentor, the distinguished humorist Richard Armour, called realists with dreams. If you'd like to learn more about cultural conservation or about my book, visit our website, www.markmywords.me. That's www.markmywords.me, as in Mark Evans. Write me. I'd like to hear from you. And of course, I invite you to read my book. I've written it for you, your children, and grandchildren. Together, we can foster and encourage achievement that will provide inspiration for the soul, energy for the human spirit, enthusiasm for the heart. Tradition and innovation can thrive in the 21st century and beyond. The choice is ours. So don't forget to mark my words.